The most powerful man in the world sits alone in his tent. Outside, barbarians threaten his empire. Inside, he writes in his journal, not for history, not for glory, but for his own sanity. Those private notes became the most influential philosophy book ever written. Marcus Aurelius never intended for anyone to read his meditations. They were his personal conversations with himself, his mental training ground. And that's exactly why they changed the world. Today, you'll discover why the Emperor of Rome wrote to himself every day, and why this ancient practice might be the most powerful tool you're not using. Picture this. You're Marcus Aurelius. You control the fate of 65 million people. Senators plot against you. Generals question your orders. Your own son might betray you. The weight of an empire rests on your shoulders. How do you not lose your mind? You write to yourself, not diary entries about your day, not complaints about your problems, but philosophical conversations with your own soul. Here's what you'll learn in the next 12 minutes. Why Marcus Aurelius treated writing as mental training. The difference between journaling and stoic self-dialogue. How to have conversations with your future self. The specific techniques that kept an emperor sane. Because here's the truth. Your mind is either your greatest ally or your worst enemy. Marcus Aurelius used writing to make sure it stayed an ally. And you can too. Point 1. Writing is thinking made visible. You don't know what you think until you write it down. Here's something most people miss about Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't writing to remember. He was writing to think. There's a massive difference. When thoughts stay in your head, they're messy, emotional, reactive. But when you force them onto paper, something magical happens. They become clear. Writing is thinking made visible. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work." As a human being, he wasn't recording what happened, he was programming what should happen. This is mental rehearsal through writing. Most people journal about their feelings. I'm stressed, I'm angry, I'm confused. That's just venting. Stoic writing is different, it's problem solving on paper. Instead of, I'm stressed, Marcus would write, what is stress but a judgment about circumstances? And judgments can be changed. See the difference? One approach keeps you stuck in emotion. The other moves you toward solution. I learned this during my darkest period. I was journaling every day, but it was just complaint after complaint. I felt worse, not better. Then I changed my approach. Instead of writing about problems, I started writing to problems. Instead of, why is this happening? I wrote, how do I respond to this? Everything shifted. Writing became my thinking partner, not my emotional dumping ground. Here's your first Marcus Aurelius technique, the Stoic dialogue. Don't write to yourself, write with yourself. Ask questions, challenge your assumptions, argue with your own thoughts. Turn your journal into a conversation between your current self and your wisest self. This is how you think like an emperor. Point 2. Your mind needs daily training. You train your body every day. Why not your mind? Marcus Aurelius understood something most people never learn. Your mind is a muscle that needs daily exercise. And writing is mental weightlifting. Every morning before dealing with senators and generals, Marcus would write. Not because he felt like it, because he knew his mind needed training. He wrote, begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. This wasn't pessimism. This was preparation. He was training his mind to expect difficulty and respond with virtue. Think about it. You wouldn't run a marathon without training your legs. You wouldn't lift heavy weights without strengthening your muscles. But you expect your mind to handle life's challenges without any preparation. That's insane. Your mind faces stress, anxiety, anger, and fear every single day. you don't train it to respond well, it will respond poorly. Writing is that training. When Marcus wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it," he wasn't being poetic. He was drilling this truth into his own mind. Repetition creates neural pathways. Neural pathways create habits. Habits create character. This is why he wrote the same ideas over and over in different ways. I do this now. Every morning I write 3 stoic principles I want to remember that day. Not because I've forgotten them, but because I want to strengthen them. Focus on what you control. This too shall pass. Respond, don't react. Simple truths, repeated daily, become unshakable beliefs. Here's your second Marcus Aurelius technique, the daily drill. Pick 3 stoic principles. Write them every morning. Not mindlessly, thoughtfully. Consider how they apply to your day. This is how you build mental muscle. This is how you become unshakable. Point 3. Write to your future self. Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing for the man he was. He was writing for the man he wanted to become. Here's the secret behind the meditations. Marcus wasn't talking to his present self. He was talking to his future self. Every entry was a message to tomorrow's Marcus. When he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one," he was programming his future behavior. This is time travel through writing. You can send instructions to your future self. Most people write about what happened. Marcus wrote about what should happen next. Remember that very little is needed to make a happy life. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. You have power over your mind, not outside events. These weren't observations. They were commands to his future self. And it worked. Marcus Aurelius is remembered as one of the greatest leaders in history, not because he was naturally perfect, but because he programmed himself to be better. He literally wrote himself into greatness. I started doing this 3 years ago. Instead of writing, "I was angry today," I write, "Tomorrow, when someone provokes me, I will pause and breathe first." Instead of recording problems, I'm programming solutions. The results have been incredible. My future self gets better instructions. My present self gets clearer thinking. My past self gets less regret. It's like having a conversation across time. Here's your third Marcus Aurelius technique, the future self letter. End each writing session with instructions to tomorrow's you. Be specific, be clear, be commanding. Tomorrow I will, when X happens, I will respond by. I will remember that. You're not just journaling, you're programming. You're becoming the author of your own character. Point 4. Use writing to process difficult emotions. Marcus Aurelius felt anger, fear, and frustration. He just didn't let them control him. Here's what most people get wrong about stoicism. They think Stoics don't feel emotions. That's nonsense. Marcus Aurelius felt everything. Anger at incompetent generals, fear about barbarian invasions, frustration with political games. The difference? He processed these emotions through writing instead of letting them explode in action. Writing was his emotional laboratory. When he was angry, he didn't yell at senators. He wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does." He was talking himself down on paper. When he was afraid, he didn't panic. He wrote, "Death smiles at us all, but all a man can do is smile back." He was building courage through words. This is emotional alchemy, transforming raw emotion into refined wisdom. Most people either suppress emotions, which creates explosion later, or express them immediately, which creates damage now. Marcus found the third way. Process them through writing. Writing gives you space between feeling and action. In that space, you can choose your response instead of being hijacked by your reaction. I learned this during a particularly difficult period at work. My boss was impossible. Every day brought new frustrations. Instead of exploding or quitting, I started writing to my anger. Why does this bother me so much? What is this teaching me? How can I respond with dignity? The anger didn't disappear, but it transformed into clarity. I saw the situation more clearly. I responded more wisely. I kept my job and my sanity. Here's your fourth Marcus Aurelius technique, the emotion processor. When strong emotions hit, don't act immediately. Write to them first. I feel because. This emotion is trying to tell me. The wise response would be, let writing be the bridge between feeling and action. This is how you respond like an emperor instead of reacting like a child. Point 5. Create your own philosophical operating system. Marcus Aurelius didn't just read philosophy, he wrote his own. Here's the most powerful thing about the Meditations. They weren't quotes from other philosophers. They were Marcus's own thoughts, refined through writing. He was creating his personal operating system for life. Every principle was tested. Every idea was his own. Every truth was earned through experience. This is what separates the Meditations from every other philosophy book. It's not theory, it's practice made permanent through writing. Marcus wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." That wasn't something he read. That was something he discovered and captured. Writing doesn't just record wisdom, it creates wisdom. When you write regularly, patterns emerge. Insights surface. Connections form that you never saw before. You become your own philosopher. I've been writing daily for 5 years now. Looking back through my journals, I can see my own philosophy developing. Ideas I wrote about casually became principles I live by. Writing revealed truths I didn't know I knew. This is how you develop your own wisdom instead of just borrowing other people's. Marcus Aurelius created principles like, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Confine yourself to the present. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. These weren't borrowed. They were born through his writing practice. Here's your fifth Marcus Aurelius technique, the principle creator. As you write, watch for patterns in your thinking. When you discover something that works, write it as a principle. Create your own philosophical operating system. Don't just consume wisdom, create it. This is how you become not just a student of philosophy, but a philosopher yourself. Here's what we've covered. Writing makes thinking visible and transforms problems into solutions. Your mind needs daily training, and writing is mental exercise. You can write instructions to your future self. Writing processes difficult emotions before they control you. And through writing, you create your own philosophical operating system. But here's the deeper truth. Marcus Aurelius didn't write because he was wise. He became wise because he wrote. The Meditations weren't the product of his wisdom. They were the process of creating it. Every entry was a conversation with himself. Every page was mental training. Every principle was earned through reflection. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing." Writing was his training ground for that wrestling match. It can be yours too. The most powerful man in the world needed daily conversations with himself to stay sane, focused, and wise. What makes you think you need them any less? Start today. Start simple. Start with yourself. What's one question you'd ask your future self? Write it in the comments. Let's start that conversation right here. If this inspired you to start writing to yourself, subscribe for more stoic practices that actually work in the real world. Because the conversation you have with yourself determines the life you live. Remember, you don't know what you think until you write it down.